Well, John, we are back, and I'm excited to go into part two of really some great information on common mistakes and the pain and the money it can cost us as parents going through the college admissions process. We have our great friend Andrew Zuronic with us here today once again. But John, before we dive into today's episode and today's 5 common mistakes, what was the common mistake we talked about last time that like it really hit home for you? And it's like, yes, if we could reiterate this one more and more again, I don't think we could tell people enough not to make this mistake. What was that one for you last time, Johnny?
I would have to say it's related to underestimating the financial planning.
Yeah.
This is just a me thing, knowing how much money these colleges cost, knowing and seeing firsthand how unaware a lot of these families are as far as what it costs. Potentially oftentimes, being naive to the idea of, money that's out there and scholarships that, appear to be easily earned. And then, they are shocked by, oh, you know what? I wasn't worthy of this scholarship, or I wasn't, aware of how much this school cost, even being in state. So to me, just, being aware of what things cost and realistically speaking, like, can you anticipate money? Can you not? And that all comes with research.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
to me,
love that.
that one hits home.
Yeah, I think, and what I'd say is that what I think Andrew did such a good of reminding us on all 5 of these is you got to start early, right? If you got to start early in the process to make sure you're not digging yourself a hole. You got to start early in the process to become educated about those finances. You got to start early in the process to really do your due diligence and become educated about your options. You just the important visiting colleges. You can't wait. Because if you wait and you think, well, it's not important right now, it's important right now. And you can't wait to say, well, when I have time, because you won't have time. Always, 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 there's going to have to be sacrifices that are made that you'll benefit from doing your due diligence and making sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's through this process. So, guys, we hope this last episode helped you out with 5 great, what I call no-nos. Don't make these mistakes. And I'm thrilled as long as John and I are thrilled that Andrew, you've joined us again. Andrew, thanks for taking your time to join us again today for another episode of Committed. And I know you have 5 more. We're going to start with number 6 now. We're going to have 5 more common mistakes. And this one, I think this is really, really key. One of the things families wait too long to do is start preparing and actually engaging in standardized tests. Tell everyone why this is a challenge in your mind, the proper flow in planning and preparation for standardized testing.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me back, number one. Number two, with regard to prepping for the SAT or ACT, here in the state of Ohio, the local high schools give every student at least one of those tests. So it's usually in February, late February, early March of their junior year. So if you think about it, at that point, the student is going to be applying in less than 6 months. So there seems to be this feeling that if the student doesn't get the score that they thought they should have gotten or would have gotten or what have you, that they just are going to have to do better, kind of thing. And it goes back to the first session that we did with anxiety. You want to try to tamp that down as much as possible. So in our office, we actually offer a practice test. We feel that the more times that a student looks at an SAT or ACT, they get more familiar with the questions. And if I had $1 for every time somebody said my student is not a good test taker, a lot of that is preparing. And it would really make a lot of sense if you can get your student to at least take a look at what the test looks like through a practice test first, maybe in their freshman or sophomore year. We don't expect them to get a 36 on the ACT, but it does give them a snapshot so they know what they need to do and how to prepare, for the process. So I think it's important to do it before. We, in our office, suggest that we start doing prep with our juniors actually in the fall of their junior year. And then if we can get the students that are either freshman or sophomore just to take a practice test, I think that's huge.
John, what have you seen as far as the problems that it creates when students start late in their SAT, ACT prep process?
There's there's not enough administrations for them to earn their highest score.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen. For those who are unfamiliar, and this is our life. So, I try to, think back to somebody who was, less aware of what's going on. A lot of the families that I've encountered, they think that the SAT is offered once at their high school. Same with the ACT. And they just assume like, oh, it's offered in, March at our local high school, then that's when we take it. And so it's being aware of, these 7 testing administrations that are available all over the country, whether it's at your high school or not. And I mean, what's the average? Kids have to take, whichever test, SAT or ACT, 2 to 3 times before they can typically reach their ceiling. And then, with the new idea of being able to super score. And so you want to make sure that you are giving your kids and the students are giving themselves enough opportunities to take it within room to improve by the time that scores have to be submitted fairly early their senior year. I encountered, students this week where, what, they maybe wanted to get one more SAT or ACT in for the October exam. And based on the schools that they're applying to, the scores won't even be back in time. And they have to make that decision prior to submitting if we're sending scores or not. So you're kind of blocking yourself in versus if you would have started, early to middle junior year, if not sooner. So then you have an adequate amount of administrations to be able to either get your highest score or have a predictor of, this is what I have. Is it worthy of sending?
Right. Guys, I think I agree with you guys 100%. So many times what I've seen from families and students is they see the ACT or the SAT as a step in the process and not something they should be strategic about in the process. Right? Oh, I got to take this, check the box. It's just a step. And that is so myopic in thinking. The ACT, the SAT needs to be a strategy that you're using intentionally around improving your chances for admission and improving your chances for scholarships. And so with that intentionality, well, that naturally means some more preparation. And so I believe the earlier you can start on that, the best. Even if it's as a freshman, starting on your speed reading, making sure you're staying up to date on some of your math principles as you're going through classes. There's fundamental things you can do to keep ahead of the game and preparing strategically for the SAT and the ACT. So don't make that mistake. That can cause you literally families, parents, students. This can cause you admission opportunities. This can cost you financial scholarship opportunities. So in this test optional world that everyone thinks, oh, I don't have to use the test. Well, you need to learn about the rules and the expectations of the schools you're interested in attending and the benefits that SAT or ACT testing can offer you. So big mistake thinking of this is a step. No, it's a strategy. All right, next one. This is mistake number 7, Andrew. I think it's a big one. And, I know you're going to share this in a way because we don't want it to sound self-serving. We don't want it to sound like, oh, you got to call John or Andrew or Rennie. That's not what we want at all, right? Well, we would love to work with you, but we don't want it to sound self-serving. This is not a sales pitch, but it is a mistake when people don't seek professional or expert advice and guidance during this process. Andrew, why, and I believe this, I believe anyone can fill out a college application, but why finding expert advice and guidance and that expertise helps families be more competitive in the process?
Well, 2 things that come to mind is, high school guidance counselors are sometimes overwhelmed. They don't focus on just the, college application process. They're helping freshmen and sophomores and juniors pick their courses. So they have a pretty heavy workload. So it's important to single out somebody that can focus on just the college process. And that's kind of where we fill that void. So I like to say we're between the guidance counselor and the college admissions office, and we're able to kind of fill some of those voids. So a typical High school counselor may have a workload of 400 students. They can't possibly spend the amount of time that needs to be done, and it's no fault of theirs. It's just they're overwhelmed. And you know, that is, I guess, I think the biggest takeaway. As I mentioned in the first session, you know, we only have 3 years to, you know, kind of prepare for this. So you don't want to get down to crunch time, the start of your senior year. We did this with our own children, and it really, there's a lot of drama. It peaks in the fall of their senior year, and you know, there's a lot of yelling that goes on. We want to keep the peace at home. Your kids are going to be gone. They're going to hopefully be on their own shortly. Enjoy the time that you have with your students while they're in high school. And just, you don't need to be the nag. Let us be the nag, or somebody like us to be the nag, because we, just coming from a third party, it just seems to work out much better. And again, I hate to say this with my own kids. If somebody else is telling them the same thing that I'm telling them, they seem to agree with it. But if it's coming from mom or dad, you guys don't know what you're talking about. So that's two areas that I think where it does help to get outside help.
As someone who has teenage students, I have a junior and I have a freshman that are going through the process. They have college planners, and they are not me and they are not Stacy, right? There are people on our staff that work with our, and now does that mean we don't have the expertise and we don't have the ability? Of course we do. But I want to be dad and Stacy wants to be mom. And I think the other thing is it's really important that they have mentors in their life. And I believe our college planners are great mentors and advocates for my daughters, and I want them to have that. But John, I know you've experienced this as well. You know, people either coming in too late, and what have they missed? Because I truly believe this. Most people can, on a basic level, navigate completing a college application. But what are they missing by not having experts surround them and being stressed now in their senior year?
This whole process has never been more strategic. So yeah, could, somebody identify a school, write an essay, fill out an application? Yeah, for sure. But just like, people could file their taxes on their own, are they going to miss something? Or are you going to hire a CPA to potentially do it correctly? It's a combination of that mentor, like you said, being able to identify what a kid actually wants versus what the parents are kind of portraying or what the parents want for their kids. Mapping out what is realistic, strategically speaking, just kind of, managing this whole thing. Now that's what we do. And, I do feel like, the support that we provide is a luxury. And like you guys said, we are never on here to sell. We're never on here to promote, what we're doing. So I think, for anybody listening that, isn't able to pay for, our kind of support, that doesn't mean that, the counselor wouldn't be available if you advocated for yourself, or, you know, reaching out to an English teacher to ask for feedback for your college essay, or connecting with the admissions counselors at these different colleges. Like, there are resources available for somebody who truly wants to go through this themselves. And, as valuable as I think we are, there are other ways to strategically and effectively do this. It's just a matter of how convenient do you want it to be for you and your kid.
Don't mistake the college admissions process that you went through and assume that it is the same for your son or daughter.
Amen.
Huge mistake. A huge mistake. This is why John and I started this podcast, because as he said, it is a competitive process and you have to know the playbook. There's the game to it. And it's much different. I promise you. I promise you. It's much different than when you applied to college. Don't make that mistake. Either find expertise counsel or become more of an expert yourself. But this is way too much of an investment, way too much of a decision for your family and that son or daughter of yours to just say, well, it's the same as I went through college. I got through it. It's a different game. The cost is different. The process is different. The competition is different.
Mm-hmm.
So please, 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 if anything, make sure mom and dad and student, you're developing your expertise and surrounding yourself with experts. All right. I love this one. I had not really considered this before, But Andrew, I love mistake number 8, if not using summertime as a separator time. Tell us a little bit about how not using summer as a time to separate from the competition is just a huge mistake.
I can only speak on my own personal experience. I have an engineering degree. I went into mechanical engineering because my dad told me to. And of course, we all listen to our dad, don't we? When I got to school, I realized quickly that I was in the wrong seat. I did not understand stresses and strains of material. My mind doesn't work that way. If I can't see it, I can't understand it. So I talked to my academic advisor and he asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to go into manufacturing." He said, "Why aren't you industrial engineering?" And here's another great example of you don't know what you don't know. I didn't have any idea what industrial engineering was, let alone mechanical engineering. If I could have gone to a summer camp where they would have, at least, if nothing else, explained the differences between the different areas of engineering, it would have been so much better for me. Now, for me personally, it was a slight pivot. It wasn't like I went from, architecture to business or something like that. So it's important to sort of prep for college, your career, and to understand what's coming. But most importantly is how to get there. And if you could have in our office, I don't believe in undecided. It's not that I've never had a student apply undecided. I just would like to have a target or a goal. If it's not meant to be, you just pivot. It's not a big deal. Every kid's changing their minds with their majors and what have you. But and again, in my particular example, a summer camp in engineering would have been a much better choice for me, just so that I know what I'm getting into.
Love that. And John, so summer camps, shadowing, but what are other things that you've seen students take advantage of this in the summer where they have a little bit more margin in their time and they're not in school every day, but what are other things students can do in the summer to really separate themselves and leverage that those summer opportunities?
From a career exploration standpoint, the internship, the job shadows, those are great. For the students that want to separate themselves truly and enhance their resume, that is when, because of time more than anything else, they can really invest into finding a passion and diving into it. If you're somebody who loves science and is interested in something STEM related, go try to do some research. To yes, I think what's most important is exposing yourself to that field. Is this something you could potentially want to do? But from an enrichment standpoint, these colleges, they want to see kids, I think, diving into a passion versus, you know what, we're just gonna, you know, throw out a bunch of feelers. We're gonna work a little bit and we're gonna have some volunteer work and we're gonna, play a sport. I feel like it's starting to shift more towards like a theme based. So really, while you have the time, seek out a camp for the engineering thing, or seek out research, or seek out some sort of business program where you can go and, make a mock business and present it to investors. There's so many opportunities out there. And those are the things that seem to make a difference. I don't want to devalue the clubs at school, the sports, but it seems like anything that is enrichment based through an organization that is not affiliated with the school seems to hold a little bit more weight.
And if I can
Go
jump
ahead.
in real quick, our pre-med students, our nursing students, we always tell them, try to get in, to an assisted living facility, try to
Mhm.
volunteer at a hospital. Why is that important? Colleges don't want to make it, or they don't want to have you look like you just fell out of bed and bumped your head and said, I want to become a nurse. So the fact that you have kind of that background and you know what sick people look like, what they smell like, I think that's vital.
Vital. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Andrew. I mean, but we hear students all the time talk about how I want to be a doctor because, man, I was really, really inspired by that episode of Grey's Anatomy. And that's not why you want to be a doctor, right? I think the summertime, what I love about it, and it can really separate you from other people, is it's a great time to pour into your passion, right? You can in what you're being is you're being proactive. If your passion is more career exploration, you can be proactive, self-directed. You're taking initiative in doing those different types of things to learn more about your profession. Maybe it's about a volunteer organization. You want to pour into, be proactive, and it's a passion of yours, you have more time to do that. Maybe you're trying to start a small business, you can do that. This is a time where you can be intentional and you can be proactive and you can pour into something that you're more passionate about. And those are the things that will really separate you. So during the summer, I tell my students I want them to relax, I want them to rest, and I want them to enjoy it. But imagine if they spent 2 to 3 hours a week being intentional, being proactive, and pouring into a passion of theirs. It can really go a long way over an 8 to 12 week summer. So that's a mistake we make. Eight is we just take summertime as vacation time, and we should vacation, right? But we can do small things that can make a big difference. All right, two more guys, two more common mistakes that are costly financially and costly emotionally. The next is just kind of being laissez-faire with our high school coursework, not being strategic, not being intentional. Andrew, how does this cost us competitiveness in applying to college? But it can also cost us money, true money. Tell us a little bit about that.
Interestingly enough, we just had a couple of college nights at our office, and all four colleges that were there had said the same thing. The two most important things that they look at on a college application is course rigor and activities. They didn't mention GPA. They didn't mention ACT score. Yes, that's part of the equation, but the two things they specifically mentioned was course rigor and activities. We encourage our kids to take as many honors AP classes as they possibly can. There's a delicate balance. If you're going to get a C in an honors course, we would prefer you not take that course. But the key of this whole thing is know who you are, know what your strengths are, and try to increase your course rigor as much as possible. Why is that important? If you can take a dual enrollment course or you can take an AP course, that's going to transfer to college credit. So our own daughter, our youngest daughter, actually went to college and transferred 23 credit hours. That was huge. And based on the previous example that I talked about is changing majors, she changed majors. It didn't impact her ability to graduate in 4 years. In fact, she got a graduate degree and her undergraduate degree in 5 years. So it's just kind of sets the table for success. The sooner you can get in, the sooner you can get out. If you can get college credit through, either AP or dual enrollment, that is a game changer. And again, it's going to save the student time and it's going to save money. And I think we all want that as well.
John, when you're talking to a student and you're helping them, advising them through the course progressions and the courses they need to take, what kind of key considerations do you make with them in being strategic about the courses they're enrolled in?
Their performance and the courses within those subjects the year prior. And going into every school year, I feel like there is a goal. We are either trying to improve a GPA, we're trying to maintain, we're trying to dig ourselves out of a hole. Depending on what the student's goal is, like Andrew said, we're, typically suggesting, honors, AP, dual enrollment based on the additional weight. But like he said, you know what, you don't, very much of this college stuff is a numbers game. And yes, they look for rigor, but, is it more advantageous to get a higher grade in an academic course versus, a lower grade in an honors or AP? I think it depends on the subject. I think it depends on what the students are majoring in. What I am also really conscious of, especially in regard to like dual enrollment, college and high school courses, I feel like depending on what they eventually want to study will be a huge factor in will those courses and credits transfer. So I am a huge advocate of, yeah, you know what? Credits are pennies on the dollar. They're usually affiliated with colleges and universities that are very transferable. But what I try to game plan for them is, anything that is considered a general elective, a humanity course, these colleges are going to be less picky about where your psychology comes from, your English composition comes from. But if it is a course that is potentially a part of your major curriculum, I feel like they're less likely to take it because they're going to want you to take their major course. But, they're like everything else. There's a method to it.
I love how you guys are approaching this because I think it's 100% accurate as someone who's been in the higher education side, but now is doing the college planning side. It's not a one size fits all. We have to look at the individual student. We have to look at their goals. Have to look at the colleges they're considering, and we have to figure out how to best position them strategically. So very, very important to surround yourself in your students with the experts who can help you guide you through that process. It's critical. Missed opportunities here happen all the time. Missed opportunities happen here all the time. And it's not because anyone has bad intention. It typically they have bad attention to the detail, and they don't have the time to do that. And that's where you find surrounding yourself with an expert can really help you. They don't have bad intentions. It's just their ability to give the attention they need. It really can help. It can really cause problems for your student and not put them in the best competitive place that possibly can be, and help your family and that student save money in getting early college credits if that is the best route for them. Last but not least, Andrew, I was thrilled when you put this on here. Seriously, I will tell people I probably read more college essays than most college planners, because I spent about 12 years in higher education, and I was on the other end of reading essays. And I can tell you, I will pick out this mistake 90% of the time.
All right. So my question to you, Rennie, how many sentences do you need to get into before you know
Yeah. First
mom
paragraph.
and dad
Yeah.
had in this essay?
First paragraph. Easy. Sometimes not that far, right? But 90% of the time I'm gonna catch is, Andrew, I love that you listed this mistake. Tell us about it.
As I mentioned, in the fall of the senior years, when the tension and drama, starts, parents want to help in their own little way, and they start rewriting the college essay. A lot of times we've worked with this student for several years. We know the student, and it just doesn't sound like the student. It doesn't have their experience. It doesn't have their voice. And we can spot it a mile away. The best example I can give you, we're working with a student. The dad happened to be an attorney. He started putting all sorts of fancy words into the essay. This is not a 17-year-old's vocabulary. And I pulled a couple of those words out and I asked the student, so what does this mean? He kind of started doing darty-eyed, and I said, what does that mean? And then he said, I'm not exactly sure. And I said, did you write this essay? And the final thing that I always look for is 2 spaces after a period. Nothing screams over 40 more than 2 spaces after a period.
And nothing screams AI more than the end dash.
Yes.
I tell you guys, it hurts my heart. And parents, I know you're not doing this trying to cheat and be unethical. I love how Andrew stated this. You're over editing. You're over editing, right? Here's what suggestion I would give you as a parent to make sure you're not over editing. Point out mistakes or things you would change, but don't rewrite the mistakes. Don't rewrite things that you would change. It's a big difference, right? It's a big difference. Pointing out things that you question, pointing out mistakes that you think are wrong, that's great. You should do that. You're only helping and serving your student in that way. But when you decide, oh, let me become the copywriter here and let me start writing it, I will. And if I can do it, Andrew says he can do it. I guarantee you, John can do it. I promise you. Admission readers know it. You might say, well, it's not great writing. It's not great. It's supposed to sound like a 17 or 18-year-old.
No matter how impressive a high school kid is, no matter how good of a writer they are, they're still 17 or 18.
They're still 17 or 18. They're not going to sound like you with the college degree or the law degree. They're not going to, nor should they. Now, here's what I'll tell you. As someone who's lived on the other side, there are different responses to it. The worst thing that can happen is that essay loses total credibility.
Mm-hmm. Well, and from an admission standpoint, I mean, I can only speak based on assumption, but how many of them get turned off when it's like, yeah, you know what? I don't believe anything this kid said, or yeah, they're trying to beat the system, whatever it is. I feel like there has to be even a small amount of resentment from an admissions counselor when you see these kind of red flags.
And what you also start doing is you start questioning the entire package.
Mhm.
Now I'm not just questioning because I don't think you wrote this essay. I start questioning, are your activities right?
Mhm.
Did you squirm a little bit when you told me about those volunteer hours? Right. And it's just not what you want. And it doesn't honestly increase the competitiveness of an application package because you feel like it's written better. Right. It needs to be good writing, but it needs to be good writing that a high school senior would write. Right. It needs to be in their voice. And it's just a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. So I mean, I will pull families off the ledge. I'm like, I can't tell you what to submit, but I'm telling you, I'm not saying you did, or the approach I take is you're over editing because now it's starting to sound like an adult wrote this, and we don't want that. I don't ever, and I truly believe this, mom and dad. You're not doing it trying to beat the system. You're not trying to be unethical, and you're not trying to cheat. You're just over editing, and give
A
your
good way to put it. It's not harsh, it's subtle.
no, and you're over editing, and I think that's a key thing is just to give them comments, don't rewrite. Give them comments and suggestions, don't rewrite it. So, guys, I think this has been a great series, right? Because these 10 mistakes that Andrew's pointed out for us, they cost. They cost. There are costly mistakes, guys. They will cost you time, guaranteed. They'll cost you time. They'll make this process more difficult and more strenuous than it has to be. It'll cost you heartache, guaranteed. Because now what you're doing is you are causing more conflict in your home. You're having the conversations with your son and daughter are more difficult and conflict laden. No, there's more stress because you're not as educated as you should be. You're guessing and not being intentional and strategic. And unfortunately, this will cost you money. One of these mistakes can cost you $20,000. Easy, easy. So we don't want to leave you just with the stress. We want to leave you with a suggestion of what's the number one thing you can do to avoid maybe the biggest mistake. What's one thing as a mom or as a dad, or if you're a student and you happen to be listening, what's one thing you can do to avoid this biggest mistake? Andrew, I'm going to start with you, then we'll get some piece of advice from Izzo.
I think the biggest mistake is, this is a journey that the student is taking. The parents are there again to guide, to help, but ultimately it's their decision. If you make up the student's mind and tell them this is where you should go, there's always going to be potential resentment, especially if it doesn't work out. So my biggest suggestion is let the student take this journey. If at all possible, try to get some outside help to kind of guide them to the best of their ability. But ultimately, let the student, go through the process. Again, it's about being mature, learning, and just really taking everything in and just again making this is their big person decision that they need to make. So that's ultimately what we want to make this up to be.
Spot on, spot on. I couldn't agree more. John, how about you?
I think Andrew said it earlier. Most kids don't know what they don't know, and decisions are made off of assumptions, they're made off of associations. Early on, take the time to just gather as much information as you can. Whether it's in-person information, whether it's research, whether it's connecting with admissions counselors, connecting with your school counselor, your college planner, just take the time to seek out everything that's available for when you are ready to make that decision, because there's usually months, if not years in between. So just gather as much knowledge as you can.
Yep. I love it. Love it. I would add this third thing. Good intent does not mean good information. And what I hear people like myself as a dad they've had maybe students that have gone through the process. They're sharing information that is either inaccurate or lacks context. All right. So in they have the best of intention. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your family friend, whatever it is, your girlfriend's parents, whatever it is, classmates, friends on the booster club, they will share information with great intention, but it is not great information because they're not experts and they may not know the context. So make sure you're surrounding yourself with experts. Make sure you're surrounding yourself and taking time for yourself to learn these things and to be educated so you can be empowered to make this very, very important decision for your student and for their future. And that is what the Committed podcast is all about, man. It's about a playbook to help you be strategic and successful in the college transition. And Andrew, man, we love having you on our show. Man, we appreciate you dropping just the value bombs galore. You really shared the good stuff today, Andrew. So thank you for joining us. John, any last comments, my man?
Nope. Can't wait for him to get on for round 3.
And we are going to get that booked with our producer as soon as possible. Guys, it is a journey and it has stress to it. But with strategy, you can find success. And that's what we're here for, Committed, the College Planning Playbook. See you on our next episode.